A thin blue halo shimmered at the edge of the viewport, the distant glow of the Uric cloud bending starlight into something almost delicate. Captain Adrian Cross stood with his hands clasped loosely behind his back, his eyes steady on the coordinates, where the Galactic Fleet was scheduled to arrive. He didn't look tense of anything. He looked like a man waiting for a train that was already late. Behind him, Lieutenant Marcus Vale lounged in a chair that most officers would have sat in stiffly, idly rolling a pen between his fingers as though the entire moment were routine. Ensign Ravi Trent, the youngest of the three, stood just off to the side, eyes darting between his datapad and the viewport, clearly trying and failing to suppress his excitement. The UN's Resolute hung in silence at the appointed rendezvous, a solitary speck of human engineering in an expanse where no human ship had lingered before. It wasn't that Earth's lacked experience in space. Travel humanity had been among the stars for over a century, but this was different. This was the day they met the Galactic Fleet face to face, the same fleet whose name was spoken in every corridor of interstellar politics with awe and often a quiet fear. "They're late," Marcus murmured, his voice carrying that dry, irreverent tone that always made Adrian wonder how the man had survived the diplomatic corps this long. "Do they know we run on coffee schedules, not cosmic epics?" Trent shot him a quick glare. "They're crossing half the sector to be here. Maybe give them a minute." Marcus smirked without looking up from the pen spinning between his fingers. "It's been 13. Adrian said nothing. He'd learned that with Marcus, silence was as much a weapon as a reprimand. Besides, his attention was fixed on the empty space ahead, on the feeling more instinct than logic that the wait was about to end. The air hummed, not in sound, but in the way space itself seemed to take a deep breath. Then, in a single dazzling moment, reality bent. A cascade of rippling distortions tore open the dark and the Galactic Fleet arrived. They didn't trickle in one by one. They arrived all at once, a sweeping curtain of light as hundreds of warships slid into normal space. Their hulls gleamed with reflective alloys patterned in geometric precision. Each vessel's formation locked so tightly it looked less like a fleet and more like a living organism. Massive dreadnoughts loomed at the center, flanked by cruisers, destroyers, and smaller ships in concentric rings. The discipline in their movement was flawless, perfect velocity matches, exact spacing, not a fraction of a degree out of place. Trent's jaw fell open. "That's incredible." Marcus tilted his head, studying them like an art critic unimpressed by a famous painting. "It's neat." Adrian's lips twitched into something almost like amusement. The comms panel chirped, the ship's AI announcing an incoming transmission. The screen blinked to life, revealing the face or what passed for a face of Fleet Admiral Excellent. His features were elongated, his skin a deep bronze that shimmered faintly as though lit from within. His eyes, black and depthless, carried the kind of authority that came from centuries of command. "Humans of Earth," the Admiral intoned, his voice carrying the deliberate weight of rehearsed ceremony. "On behalf of the Galactic Union, I extend formal greetings to your species on this historic occasion. May this meeting mark the beginning of cooperation and mutual understanding." Adrian inclined his head in a slow, deliberate nod. "Admiral." Captain Adrian Cross, representing Earth and the United Nations Space Directorate. "We appreciate the welcome." His tone was courteous, even warm, but there was no tremor of awe, no ceremonial stiffness. "If any of your crew would like to board for discussions, we've got fresh coffee brewing." A flicker passed over Excellent's expression, too subtle for Trent to notice. But Adrian caught it a momentary disruption in the Admiral's controlled poise. Marcus leaned toward the captain and muttered, "Huss," loudly enough for the bridge. "Crew to hear, 10 credits says they don't drink anything hotter than room temperature." Trent choked on a laugh, then tried to mask it as a cough. The admiral ignored the remark officially, at least. Our flagship will dispatch a delegation to your vessel. Prepare to receive our envoy. The transmission cut. Trent straightened. Suddenly, all protocol and posture. Sir, that's a show of presence, Adrian finished for him. They want us to see them up close before they see us. Marcus tossed the pen onto the console. Classic intimidation move. Works. Better when the other side's impressed. Trent hesitated. You're not? Adrian turned from the viewport. Trent, the galaxy's big. Ships are ships. People are people. Some just happen to fly in straighter lines than others. Still, the crew prepared. Not with rigid formality, but with a casual precision that outsiders often mistook for carelessness. The Resolute's decks were spotless, the air scrubbers humming at perfect efficiency, every system running at peak. Yet Adrian allowed his officers to move with the ease of men who'd faced worse than pomp and ceremony. 15 minutes later, the Galactic Delegation's shuttle detached from their flagship and began its approach. The alien craft gleamed silver and gold, its hull etched with patterns that caught and refracted the light of the distant sun. It moved with surgical precision, aligning with the Resolute's docking bay in a maneuver so flawless it might have been choreographed. Trent watched. The monitor with wide eyes. They're perfect. Marcus didn't look up from the console. He was idly tapping. No, they're rehearsed. Big difference. The airlock cycled open with a hiss, and the envoy stepped through. He was tall Lizily, a head and a half above. Adrian with a lean, insectoid frame. His chitin shimmered in muted tones of copper and green, and his movements were fluid but deliberate. His gaze swept the human reception party, his black compound eyes unreadable. Adrian stepped forward, hand extended in greeting. Welcome aboard the Resolute. I'm Captain Cross. The envoy paused, as though assessing the gesture, before reaching out with a three-jointed arm to clasp Adrian's hand. His grip was light, but his movement spoke of strength held in reserve. I am Thervok, voice of the Galactic Fleet for this meeting, the envoy said, his tone measured. Your species has traveled far to stand among the stars. We acknowledge your resilience. The pause before the last word was subtle but noticeable. Marcus gave a small, approving nod. At least he didn't say persistence. Thervok's gaze flicked to him. And you are? Lieutenant Vale. I ask the questions no one wants answered. Trent shot Marcus a warning look, but Adrian simply smiled faintly. He means he's our tactical officer. The envoy's attention shifted back to Adrian. Our admiral will speak further after formal introductions. Until then, I am to observe your vessel. Adrian gestured toward the corridor. Then let's get started. Watch your step, the decking's not made for claws. They walked together through the Resolute, the human crew nodding politely, but without the hushed reverence Thervok might have expected. Adrian let the envoy see the ship's heart, the engineering bay humming with power, the command center running on quiet efficiency, but never the sense that they were trying to impress. When they reached the mess hall, the smell of brewing coffee hung in the air. One of the crew poured a cup without asking, setting it in front of Thervok as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The envoy studied the steaming liquid, then looked at Adrian. You consume this? For what purpose? Adrian's mouth curved into a grin. To keep from killing each other before lunch. Marcus chuckled under his breath. Thervok's mandibles shifted, uncertain if it was a joke or a threat. He took no sip, merely set the cup aside with deliberate care. Your species' ways are orthodox. Adrian leaned in slightly, his voice dropping just enough to be conversational. That's one word for it. They continued the tour, but beneath the polite exchanges, Adrian could feel the weight of the envoy's scrutiny. Every gesture, every relaxed posture from his crew, Every unfiltered comment from Marcus was being cataloged and, no doubt, reported. The fleet hadn't come here simply to greet them, they'd come to measure them. When the tour ended, Thurvok stood once more at the airlock, flanked by two of his aides. "I will relay to the Admiral that your vessel is functional. He will wish to show you what the Galactic Fleet truly is." Adrian clasped his hands loosely behind his back again, the same posture he'd held at the start. "We'll be ready." The envoy's gaze lingered a moment longer before he stepped through the airlock. The hatch sealed, and the alien shuttle drifted back toward the flagship with the same flawless precision as its arrival. Marcus exhaled through his nose. So, formal show of force next. Adrian's eyes returned to the viewport, to the perfect, unyielding lines of the fleet. Probably, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Should be interesting." Trent glanced between them. "You're both acting like this is some kind of game." Adrian didn't look away from the stars. "It is. The trick is making sure you're the one writing the rules." The following morning, the Resolute's bridge crew gathered under the pale glow of the forward displays. The Galactic Fleet hung in the distance like a glittering wall, their formation so precise it seemed carved into the void. Adrian stood at the center, quietly observing the incoming communications stream. The envoy's return had been confirmed before Don Thurvok would be boarding again, this time to deliver the Admiral's invitation. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a steaming cup in one hand. "If I had to guess, they're going to give us a lecture before showing off their toys. That way, they get maximum self-importance per minute." Trent frowned without looking up from his console. "Or maybe they're just being polite." "Not everything's a performance." Marcus sipped his coffee. "If it were just politeness, they'd have sent us a fruit basket and gone home." Adrian allowed the conversation to run its course without cutting in. He'd learned that Marcus's sarcasm, while grating to some, had a way of revealing the tension underneath. Even Trent's need to defend the alien spoke to his unease. It wasn't fear more, like the taut anticipation before the first move. In a match neither side could afford to lose. The COM panel lit. Docking request from Galactic Fleet shuttle confirmed. The ship's AI reported. "Clear them to board," Adrian said. When the airlock cycled open, Thurvok stepped through. With the same deliberate grace as before, though there was a stiffness in his bearing now. Two aides trailed behind him, their movements synchronized, their gazes sweeping every corner with mechanical precision. Thurvok's mandibles clicked faintly, a sound that could have been irritation or emphasis. "Captain Cross," he said, bowing his head the precise degree dictated by his people's customs. "The Admiral bids you join him aboard the Vorak Spear, the flagship of the Galactic Fleet. He wishes to demonstrate the strength and purpose of our alliance." Adrian's brows lifted slightly. "Purpose." Thurvok's compound eyes fixed on him, "that you may understand the scale of the force that safeguards the Union and, should you join us, your world." Marcus muttered from behind. Translation: "Watch how scary we are." Trent gave him a sharp look, but Adrian only said, "We'll attend." The trip to the Vorak Spear was short, but the transition from human to alien architecture was immediate and absolute. The docking bay was cathedral-like, its vaulted ceilings adorned with shimmering inlays that caught the faint light of the hangar shields. Crew members moved in ordered streams, each step measured, every gesture aligned to an unspoken rhythm. Even the air felt different, dry, cold, and faintly metallic. Adrian, Marcus, and Trent were escorted through wide corridors into a chamber, dominated by a massive hollow projection of the surrounding sector. Admiral Exlin stood at the far end, his posture rigid, his black eyes unreadable. His voice, when it came, was deep and resonant, designed to fill the room without effort. "Humans of Earth," he began, "you come from a world of conflict, resilience, and survival against great odds. You have reached the stars through determination. But determination alone cannot protect a people in the greater void. Today, you will see the force that holds the galaxy in balance. With a gesture, he activated the projection. The image shifted to a simulated combat zone. Hostile fleet pirates, judging by their jagged hulls and erratic formations, materialized. The Galactic Fleet responded with immediate precision. Squadrons moved as one, shields interlocking, weapons firing in a flawless cascade. In seconds, the enemy ships were neutralized, drifting wreckage fading from the display. Trent's eyes widened. Marcus folded his arms. "This," Excellence said, "is the discipline and power that ensures peace." "It's impressive," Adrian said truthfully, though his voice carried no awe. "Your coordination is impeccable." Marcus's tone was mild, but his words were anything but. "Do you always fight that clean? No unexpected maneuvers? No improvisation? What happens if the enemy doesn't follow the script?" Several alien officers shifted uncomfortably. Excellen's gaze hardened. "Such unpredictability is rare." Among those who challenged the Union, Marcus smiled faintly. "Lucky you." Thurvok's mandibles clicked again, sharper this time. Humans speak often of chance and unpredictability, as though chaos is a strength. Adrian met his gaze evenly. "It can be. It's the difference between surviving and winning." The Admiral studied them in silence for a long moment. "Perhaps it is time for you to show us what humanity considers strength." The simulation was reconfigured, this time with the Resolute placed against a similar hostile fleet. The fleet's officers stood at the edges of the chamber, their postures expectant, certain of the outcome. Adrian didn't bother with formal orders. Marcus was already leaning over the tactical console, plotting trajectories that bent the simulations. Parameters without technically breaking them. Trent took weapons control, his fingers dancing across the interface with the quick precision of someone who'd grown up on combat sims. The Resolute feigned a systems malfunction within the first minute, drifting just enough to bait the enemy into overextending. Then they cut engines, allowing momentum to sling them around a debris field at an angle no cautious commander would attempt. Their weapons fired in bursts, timed not to overwhelm shields, but to coax the enemy into burning through their reserves. Within 4 minutes, the simulated pirate fleet was in disarray. By 6, it was gone entirely. When the projection faded, the chamber was silent. Marcus leaned back, as though the result were inevitable. "That's what we call playing with our food." Trent suppressed a grin. Excellent's expression did not change, but the flicker in his eyes was unmistakable. Unorthodox, wasteful of resources, yet effective. "Survival isn't always pretty," Adrian said, "and the galaxy isn't always polite." Thurvok's gaze was narrow, but there was a new weight in it. "You fight like predators." Adrian gave a small shrug. "We fight like survivors." The Admiral dismissed them with formal words of acknowledgement, but as they were escorted back toward their shuttle, Adrian felt the shift in the air. Respect, perhaps, but tempered by caution. The fleet had come expecting to impress humans into compliance. Instead, they'd seen something they didn't entirely understand, couldn't easily control. Back aboard the Resolute, Marcus dropped into his chair with a satisfied sigh. "So, when do we tell them we weren't even trying?" "Not yet," Adrian said, his gaze fixed on the alien flagship visible through the viewport. "Let them wonder how much worse it could get." Trent hesitated before asking, "Sir, you think they see us as allies now?" Adrian's smile was faint, almost cold. "They see us as a variable they can't predict." "That's better." The comms chimed again, a soft but deliberate tone. An incoming transmission from the Varak Spear. Adrian accepted it without turning from the viewport. Thurvok's voice filled the bridge, formal and deliberate. "The Admiral wishes to extend an invitation for further cultural exchange." a chance for our peoples to better understand one another. Marcus leaned forward, his grin dangerous. Translation: they want to poke the tiger again. Adrian finally turned toward the comms. Tell the Admiral we'd be honored. When the channel closed, the captain looked at his crew. Let's make sure they leave with the right kind of story. Through the viewport, the Galactic Fleet's perfect formation held steady, a wall of polished metal and discipline. Somewhere inside that formation, a meeting was being planned, one that would decide whether this first contact became an alliance or a standoff written in the histories of two civilizations. Adrian found himself looking forward to it. He didn't want their fear, not yet. He wanted their respect and the slow, dawning realization that humans were laughing for a reason. The Resolute glided into position alongside the Varak Spear, the flagship's immense hull blotting out half the stars in the viewport. Its sleek, bronze plating shimmered faintly, as though the metal itself breathed. Adrian stood on the bridge, hands clasped loosely, watching the alien vessel with the calm focus of a man about to sit across from a card player who'd just reshuffled the deck. Marcus leaned over the tactical console, scanning energy readings. Trent's posture was taut, his gaze flitting between displays. His earlier excitement tempered by the realization that every move they made was now under the fleet's magnifying glass. The comms crackled. A young voice from the fleet relayed the Admiral's instructions. The humans were to prepare for a joint fleet exercise live simulation, multiple variables, and full tactical transparency. The request was couched in the language of cooperation, but there was steel in the delivery. Marcus smirked. They're not asking. They want to see if we can swim without their lifeguard on duty. Adrian's tone was steady. Then we'll swim, and we won't stay in the shallow end. Preparations were swift. The Resolute systems purred at peak efficiency. Weapons charged for simulated output, shields calibrated to fleet specifications. Every adjustment was made with the knowledge that alien eyes were watching, analyzing, judging. Adrian didn't care to play their game by rote, but he knew better than to give them the satisfaction of thinking humans were careless. The briefing was transmitted moments later. A crisp display of the exercise parameters. 2 fleets, 1 human, 1 alien would coordinate against a simulated hostile force in a contested system. It was designed to showcase the fleet's unity of command and the supposed inefficiency of independent operations. Adrian could almost hear the subtext. See how your chaos collapses without our order. When the simulation began, the enemy appeared in scattered clusters, raiders, carriers, and heavily armed frigates sweeping in from multiple vectors. The fleet moved instantly, their ships folding into textbook formations, lines of fire overlapping like a woven net. Every vessel's role was defined before the first volley. The Resolute did not join the formation. Instead, Adrian ordered a lateral burn, taking them wide around the fleet's left flank. Trent's hands flew over the weapons console, arming a spread of simulated warheads. Marcus tracked enemy thrust patterns, his voice low but precise as he called out gaps in the raiders' dispersal. Within minutes, the Resolute had cut through the rear of the enemy's formation, scattering their advance and forcing them to divert ships toward the humans. Rather than pressing the main line, the fleet commander's voice snapped over the shared channel. Resolute, you are outside coordinated coverage. Return to assigned vector immediately. Adrian's reply was calm. Negative. We've got their carrier exposed. 2 minutes and it's gone. The carrier's shields failed under concentrated fire, and in the simulation, the vessel erupted into a blossom of light. Enemy formations faltered, their attack fractured. Fleet ships capitalized, pushing forward with renewed precision. But the Resolute didn't stop. Marcus had already plotted a warp microjump through a dense debris field, an impossible maneuver. For the fleet's bulkier ships, they emerged behind the second wave of hostiles. tearing through their vulnerable drives before the enemy even registered the breach. By the time the alien fleet rotated to respond, the battle was effectively over. The simulation ended with the enemy annihilated in a third of the projected time. The shared comm channel fell silent. On the bridge, Marcus grinned. And that, gentlemen, is why you don't put all your ships in a neat row. Trent glanced at the fleet's data feed, his voice almost hesitant. There, not reacting. Adrian knew better. The silence wasn't confusion, was recalibration. The fleet had just watched their doctrine get shredded by a smaller, more agile vessel that refused to play along. Somewhere in those towering command decks, the admiral was revising his estimates. When the Resolute was summoned back to the Verac Spear, the atmosphere in the reception hall was different. Still formal, still meticulous. But now there was a tension beneath the surface and awareness that the humans had shifted the balance. Excellenz stood waiting, flanked by his officers, his expression as still as a carved idol. "You fight," he said slowly, "without cohesion. You risk exposure. You break formation. You disregard the unity of the whole, and yet you prevail." Adrian met his gaze evenly. Formations are fine for drills, but a real fight, it doesn't care how straight your lines are. Thervok stepped forward, his mandibles clicking in measured rhythm. "Your methods are efficient in ways that disturb us." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Disturbance can be useful. Keeps your enemies guessing." The admiral's eyes narrowed slightly. "And your allies." Adrian let the pause stretch just long enough. If they can't handle unpredictability, they're not ready for what's out there. The exchange hung in the air, taut as a drawn bowstring. Then Excellenz inclined his head, motion not of concession, but of acknowledgement. "Perhaps there is merit in your approach, but understanding it will require more than simulations." He stepped closer, his height casting a shadow over the humans. "Tomorrow, you will host the fleet's senior staff aboard your vessel. We will see how humans fight when they are not fighting." Adrian recognized the move instantly. It's a cultural test, just as much a political one. The fleet wanted to strip away the controlled conditions to see if the human strength was a facade or something woven into their bones. He nodded once. "We'll be ready." On the shuttle ride back, Marcus broke the silence. "So, they're coming to dinner." "Something like that," Adrian said. Trent shifted uneasily. "Sir, you think they're trying to trap us?" Adrian's gaze stayed on the fleet's glittering formation beyond the shuttle's viewport. "If they are, they'll regret it. Hospitality's a dangerous game when you're playing with humans." By the time the Resolute docked, word of the fleet's visit had spread through the crew. The mess hall staff were already debating menus. The engineering team discussing how to show off systems without revealing too much. And Marcus was quietly assembling a list of stories that were equal parts truth and calculated provocation. Adrian walked the length of the main deck alone before returning to the bridge. Through the forward glass, the Verac Spear loomed like a patient predator. Somewhere inside, the fleet was plotting their next move, certain they were still in control of the game. Adrian's mouth curved in a faint smile. Let them think that. Tomorrow, they'd learn the truth, that humans didn't just fight differently, they lived differently. And that difference could be more disarming than any weapon. The Resolute's mess hall had never been this alive. Tables were cleared of their usual trays and data pads, replaced with long serving boards piled with smoked meats, fresh bread, and bowls of rich stew whose aroma filled every corner. The hum of the ship's systems was drowned out by the thrum of music from a corner speaker. The deep rhythm of bass mingling with bursts of laughter from the crew. Every plate, every bottle, every gesture had been placed with care, not the stiff, ceremonial care of a diplomatic dinner, but the easy readiness of men hosting friends they didn't entirely trust. Adrian stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching the crew move with a loose confidence that no rehearsal could match. Marcus was at the center table, sleeves rolled up, arguing cheerfully with Chief Engineer Harlow about whether the stew needed more heat. Trent was checking the temperature on the drink's chiller, muttering to himself as though the fate of the galaxy rested on it. This was no formal reception. It was a human evening, messy and alive. When the airlock cycled open, the room did not fall silent. It swelled, instead, the noise and laughter wrapping around the newcomers like a wave. Thurvok entered first, posture taut, flanked by 2 aides and followed by Admiral Exelin and a half-dozen of the fleet's senior officers. The alien delegation paused just inside, their eyes adjusting to the shifting lights, their expressions those that could be re-caught between curiosity and suspicion. Adrian stepped forward, his smile faint but genuine. "Welcome aboard the Resolute. We figured you've seen enough formal rooms for one lifetime." Marcus, without looking up from the table, called "coats on the rack, mandibles wherever's comfortable." A few human crewmen chuckled. The aliens did not. Excellen's gaze swept the room, lingering on the music, the food, the easy posture of men unburdened by ceremony. "This is your idea of hospitality." "It's our idea of honesty," Adrian said. "You wanted to see how we are when we're not in formation. This is it." The Admiral's eyes narrowed slightly, but he accepted the seat offered at the head of one long table. The other officers followed, sitting stiffly while humans moved around them with unstudied familiarity. Plates were set down without fanfare. Drinks poured without asking preferences. Trent slid a steaming bowl toward Thurvok. "Careful, it's hot." "And yes, it's supposed to be." The envoy studied the dish, then glanced at Adrian. "Your species consumes this regularly?" Adrian said, "Keeps us warm, keeps us talking." The fleet officers ate cautiously at first, their movements precise and measured. The humans did not slow to match. They talked over each other, interrupted mid-sentence, laughed loud enough to make the deck plates vibrate. Slowly, the alien delegation began to lean in, to observe, to ask questions. Harlow told a story about patching a hull breach with nothing but a welding torch and a sheet of titanium while under fire. Marcus countered with a tale of bluffing an armed smuggler into surrender by convincing him the Resolute had a hidden railgun, which it didn't. Trent described a storm on Titan that had stranded him for 3 days in a survey shelter with nothing but ration bars and an old deck of cards. The fleet officers listened, their initial stiffness giving way to something like fascination. Exelin spoke less, but his eyes missed nothing. Midway through the evening, the Admiral leaned toward Adrian. "Your people speak of hardship as though it were a badge of honor." Adrian met his gaze evenly. "It's not a badge. It's the proof we're still here." The Admiral considered that, his expression unreadable. "And you laugh in the telling." "Because we survived," Adrian said. "And because if we don't laugh, we remember too much of what it cost." The words hung there, not as bravado, but as a simple truth. Then Marcus, as if sensing the weight of the moment, raised his glass. "To our new friends, may we never have to kill each other." Several of the crew laughed. Some of the aliens did not seem to know if it was a joke. Exelin, after a pause, gave a short, chittering sound that might have been laughter. Thurvok glanced at him, clearly startled. The Admiral straightened. "Captain Cross, your species is unlike any I have commanded alongside. You defy structure. You treat danger with levity. You endure, in ways that are difficult to quantify. I do not yet know if this makes you valuable allies or dangerous ones." Adrian's mouth curved faintly. "Why not both?" The Admiral's gaze held his for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended a hand. Adrian took it without hesitation. The handshake was firm. The kind given between two commanders who might one day share a battlefield door face each other across one. When the alien delegation departed, the mess hall erupted into fresh laughter and noise, the tension dissolving. As quickly as it had come, Marcus dropped into a chair beside Adrian, grinning. "So, we just got the most disciplined fleet in the galaxy to drink our beer and listen to our fishing stories." Adrian looked toward the viewport, where the fleet's ships hung like a patient constellation. "They came to measure us. Now, they know we're not the same as them." Trent joined them, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think they'll want us as allies?" Adrian's eyes stayed on the stars. "They'll want us close. Whether that's for friendship or for keeping an eye on us, we'll see." Outside, the Verak's spear shifted position, its great bulk turning slowly toward the distant dark. Somewhere beyond that darkness lay the next test, the next encounter, the next laugh in the face of whatever the galaxy thought it could throw at humanity. Adrian's smile was small, but certain. They'd come to the table, expecting to impress. Instead, they'd left knowing they'd sat with equals and, maybe with something far more unpredictable. Whatever came next, the fleet would never look at Earth as a curiosity again. They'd look at it as a presence, a force, and perhaps, if they were very wise, as a friend worth keeping.